There we go, darling. How's your day going?
Well, not well. I mean, to be fair, I'm doing substantially better than any Ukrainian.
Okay, glass half full guy.
Hang on, let's go back. Not even a week. Let's go back 2 weeks, and where I said Vladimir Putin's not insane.
Yes, you did say that.
He's not going to invade the Ukraine.
You didn't say he's not insane. You said he's not You said he is practical.
I said it's not pragmatic. That's right. I think that's
the word. You said pragmatic. So look at you.
Well, yeah. No, concerningly, I've found out that he is substantially less pragmatic, less sane than I had given him credit for. And
it's okay. Like I said, James, there's grace for you, man. This is a half Christian podcast, remember?
Which half?
Only the good half.
Is it Ukrainian Orthodox or?
Did you know that over $5 trillion exchanges hands on a daily basis? That's an average of over $220 billion an hour. Now, how does this much money move every single day, and why does it move the way it does? Here on Drunkenomics, two bartenders who also happen to be students at the University of Nebraska Graduate School of Business are going to sit down and drink to the global economy and try and translate it into English. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a stiff one, and have a drink with us to the comedy that is the global economy.
All right, welcome back to Drunkenomics, the drinking podcast with the economics problem. I am currently your more gracious host, James Goldwater, alongside my favorite and less gracious host, Aaron Wong.
So much less gracious. It's unbelievable.
Well, the worst part is, given my position historically, I should be the less gracious host currently.
Right.
Having said that, we use the VIX. The VIX, it's indifferent.
We can't dispute the VIX.
And thus I am more gracious.
The VIX is all-knowing and wise and whatever. So the VIX has spoken and said, James, you are more gracious, even though you said what you said.
Well, I've said what I said. I'll be honest.
You're still more gracious.
And for all our listeners, let's be fair. I gave Vladimir Putin a lot more credit for being sane than we're currently seeing.
I think whatever it was, he reached his breaking point.
My concern is I don't think Vlad reaches the breaking point. I think his general staff does. And
maybe.
In the same way that Tsar Nicholas was, maybe that's what happens to Putin. Let me rephrase that. Hopefully, that's what happens to Putin. So maybe some more reasonable heads will.
Well, we'll see. I don't know if you saw that picture of that long table with all of his associates sitting way on the other end of like that mile-long table, and he's sitting alone at the top of the head.
You can't catch COVID at that distance.
Yeah, I guess you can't. But I mean, all of his associates and minions and councilmen over there, they were sitting right next to each other, elbow to elbow, bumping elbows. But speaking of bumping elbows, if you want to bump elbows with us, you can find us on social media. What is it? The Metaverse, whatever it's called now, Instagram and Facebook, and then Twitter at Drunkenomical, DRUNKENOMICAL. That's much easier before 9 shots.
You say
just
9,
saying, James.
I said 12. It's on me.
I'm just saying. I've had less than 9. You've had more than 9.
I have.
So,
I have
but
had
I've
more than
comfortably.
9. and it is because for the last week I've been trying to figure out exactly where things go tits up for the Russians. And
exactly.
In the end, it boils down to it should have been. Well, let's put it this way. Ukraine shouldn't still be a credible threat to the Russian military after a week.
Well, they shouldn't be, but they are. I mean, Russia's having a tough time with this invasion, which is great. I mean, that makes me happy.
Well, yeah. But it's one of those things for me, it's one of those things where it's the Russians have had 7 days and they've established aerial superiority.
Yeah.
They're always going to have that. But they haven't established aerial dominance.
Which is weird.
Really? You've had a week.
But credit to the Ukrainians for being resilient and all that kind of stuff. I mean, seriously, that's awesome. That's kudos to them.
For me, and the Ukraine is absolutely not interested in allowing Russia to dictate a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
And so thus my response to that is, so have you seen the video of the babushka? So the grandma who's out in her village just going, why are you in my fucking country? Why are you fucking here?
I actually haven't seen that video, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I've seen references to the video. I haven't actually seen the video.
So she turns to the soldier and she hands him sunflower seeds, the national flower of Ukraine. She hands him sunflower seeds. She goes, put these in your pockets so when you die here, flowers grow. I mean, look, I've never picked a fight with my grandma, but I absolutely believe my grandma is capable of that kind of out of nowhere picking a fight.
Right.
Come at me.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I want to start this presentation out. Welcome to the presentation, by the way. I want to start by saying, sorry, Mr. Week. I had one crazy week. James had a crazy week last week.
We did,
this
yeah.
Week,
no, it's
this week has also been crazy, but we're late. But better late than never. I mean, sometimes when you turn a paper in a day late in class or whatever, you still get some credit. So yeah, you still get some credit. You still can get a B, right? Technically. So this is us. We're shooting for the B right now. But what else were we going to talk about? I mean, Russia invaded Ukraine when we were with the microphones. So of course we're going to talk about this. I mean, this is one of the biggest economic events in, I don't know, since probably COVID.
I think it's actually the biggest this year. Actually, I was sitting so comfortable on 50 basis points. And then this, and now I'm like 25.
Right, because that bet.
This is going to cost me whiskey.
Whiskey that you could have had that I probably will have because today, so a lot of things happened.
Actually, to be fair, I'm not saying this is worse than
right, of course.
If I got the whiskey at 50.
Fair enough, yeah. I mean, conveniently, a lot of things happened when we took our week off because of work and stuff and life events and whatever. Poisoning. Yeah. And so Russia invaded Ukraine because domestically, let's just check this box real quick, I guess. Jerome Powell at the Fed hearing this morning, today is Wednesday, March 2nd. The Fed hearing this morning, Jerome Powell was like, yo, this uncertainty is making us reluctant to raise interest rates by 50 basis points because that could spook things by
more than 25 essentially is what he was at. And I was like,
yeah, so
Jerome, I had whiskey on this.
Yes, exactly. So this uncertainty, obviously it's going to squeeze commodities because I mean, look at what's happening with gas. Oil. Yeah, I mean, oil and gas, I mean, they're reaching all-time highs. It seems like every day they're reaching new all-time highs.
Or at least since 2013.
Yeah, well, yeah, because we all know what happened in 2014 with the whole shale production and all that kind of stuff. So they're reaching 8-year highs, I should say, not all-time highs. That's a little bit exaggerated. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Russia's supply is about, like, their gas exports, their gas and oil exports, respectively, are about 6.2 and 8.4% of global production, right? So
correct. Yeah, it's about
that. So
yeah, that's correct.
6.2 and 8.4% respectively of global production. I feel like that's pretty significant.
It's not insignificant, is what I'll say.
Yeah, especially to Europe it is. To the U.S. not so much.
Especially if you're the Germans, where where half your gas comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
Russia.
So if gas is more expensive in Germany and in the EU, it's going to be expensive everywhere else, especially with these sanctions, which
we're about to explain all of it, and it gets worse. I promise.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets worse. So if you have a stiff one in front of you, why don't you just plug and chug, and then we'll resume our conversation. But
and if you don't, you should get one in front of you because sanctions are very interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start with a very simple thing, which is to say Russia invades Ukraine, and you can actually. There are economic sanctions, and then there are just simply
targeted sanctions.
No, I'm going to Nord Stream too. So there are targeted sanctions, and then there are general sanctions. And so, at the very beginning, when Russia started this, Germany's one of their first ones at the gate is they decertified the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Oh yeah, that was the very first one. Yeah,
that was the very first one out the gate. So 50% of the natural gas in Germany comes from Russia. And a second pipeline that was complete hadn't started running, natural gas yet to Germany.
I thought they had, but it was one of those things.
It has not. It was it was just about complete.
Oh, so when they said, I forget, there's like 100-something cubic meters of nat gas. I forget, a day or something like that was supposed to run through that. I forget what it was.
And that's the flow.
Yeah, so here it is. 110 billion cubic meters of nat gas per year was going to go through that Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So bam. No more, right?
And then suddenly the Germans say, actually, we're decertifying this. It's not a legitimate source of fuel anymore. It's over. And now there's questions, right? So now it's suddenly Germany's not willing to consume this thing they built, and it gets worse. But again, it's simply they're not going to consume from it. Fine. The real sanctions come after that. Now, that one's a big one because the firms that built it and everything else, they're already committed. They already have debt instruments facing that, and then suddenly no revenue is coming in. Oh my.
Oh geez, yep.
And so that's what happens essentially on Thursday, Friday?
I think so. It was one of the days where I wasn't paying attention to the news because I was getting hammered at a bachelor party.
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
So here's for the next part. Now, I'm a pretty hawkish guy.
Generally,
you may or may not know this. I was about 50 basis points and I'm still going to be angry despite this conflict if Jerome Powell doesn't do it. But that is nothing apparently compared to the hawks
in the Russian Central Bank. Wow, yeah. What a crazy.
I've never seen 9.5% turn to 20.
I've never seen a 1,050 basis point rate hike ever. And it was overnight.
Out of nowhere.
It was like an emergency thing. It was like when they when they cut rates for COVID and they just like emergency meeting, emergency rate cut.
Welcome to Moscow. We're going the other way on that one.
Yeah. But in all fairness to their hawkishness, the Russian ruble, which is their currency, before...
Did you say ruble? I thought I heard rubble.
Rubble. It's the same thing now. I mean, you might as well blow up a building, and then there's rubble, and it's about worth as much as a single ruble now.
Rubble used to have a building. A ruble, I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, too, to the ruble, at one point, the ruble held value and had some utility. But, I mean, now, last I saw, which was like last Friday, it was 1 ruble was at a penny.
Not even that.
Not even that.
92% of a penny.
Yeah, and then eventually, I think I saw it the other day. It was like $1 gets you 120 rubles. So obviously a lot less than a penny. So in all fairness to that type of hyperinflation, what else did you think was going to happen when all these countries sanctioned you? And we'll get more in depth into the sanctions in a bit, but all these sanctions happen. This is the economic turnout, the economic repercussion.
Your currency collapses because you can't buy anything from anywhere else anymore. This point is only one of those times where it's like, cryptocurrency is taking off. It's almost like it's doing its criminal thing.
Well, yeah, I know. And I'll say this too about the whole Bitcoin thing is, along with Bitcoin, gold has gone up and bond yields, remember we talked about this a lot, bond yields are going down.
Absolutely.
So I think not this Bitcoin thing, it's I hate saying this and Bitcoin in the same sense, but it's this flood towards Bitcoin, gold, and bonds. Oh God, it's going to be really hard for me to say. It's a risk off. Oh God, that sucked. It was a risk off strategy. It was an inflation hedge strategy.
Oh, that hurt actually.
I'm sorry. Are your ears okay?
No. Thank you for asking.
I had to ask. I mean, I could see you kind of like, you look like you're getting stabbed by a needle right now after I said that.
Well, yeah, but I think at the same time, we're at a point where I'm looking at the fact that we're at war right now. Well, not we.
Other people.
Ukraine's at war right now. I feel like I have to explain. I feel like we have to explain the sanctions.
I know, but before we get there, I'll just say this. This is just kind of the global economic repercussion, which is everybody's rushing to bonds. Apparently, stocks seem to be kind of
James Bonds.
James Goldwater bonds.
I don't have those.
Yeah, if you did, I mean, we'd be doing a lot better. Or actually, you would be doing a lot better. I don't want to just lump myself in that category.
That's right. You can have champagne too.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Can I have a martini with gin, not vodka? Please say yes.
Lemon and light.
Nice, thank you. I just needed your permission.
As long as we're on the same page.
Yes, exactly. I wouldn't drink with Russian vodka.
I've had a few shiners as well, so I love it.
Nice. Cheers, man. But no, this is just kind of the economic repercussion. Everybody's just trying to figure the stock market is trying to price this in. They don't really know what's going to happen. They think experts today on CNBC said that the markets figured it out. I don't know. I have no idea.
I think markets have figured oil out.
I still don't know because this backwardation thing. So oil is, speaking of which, that's another economic repercussion. Was oil reaching above 110 a barrel? Now they're in backwardation, right? You think because they're in backwardation, they figured it out?
No, I think just because of what I'm seeing that they're practicing at or what they're selling at right now suggests that they are pricing correct things in.
And I'll say this too. Like, not only are they in backwardation, I think they're still in backwardation. I haven't checked. But OPEC doesn't seem to be doing anything. They're not, like, putting out for the team. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely not. No, we won't see a increased pumping of oil until April from OPEC.
So they're keeping it what? Increasing 400,000 barrels a day per month?
They're inching in starting.
So a month from now.
In April,
They're going to start.
So nothing out of the march.
Gosh, because 400,000 barrels a day is like nothing. And if you think about it, the U.S. consumes about 21 million barrels of oil a day.
Correct.
And they're saying they're going to release oil reserves. Biden and yesterday at the State of the Union said 60 million barrels of oil.
I'll be honest.
Which I'm like, that's
Biden
3 days.
Went and talked about the strategic oil reserve, and he never said we're going to increase supply. And actually, that really upsets me.
Oh, Wow.
Biden's doing a job, and just to call it good is that's on you.
I don't know if he's doing anything, to be honest with you, but I mean, 60 million.
Frankly, I don't worry about his Twitter and the market, so
yeah,
I'm fine.
But I worry about other things too. Regardless, 60 million barrels that he's releasing in the strategic oil reserves.
Yep,
it's going to help, but for 3 days, right?
Well. The real problem is the strategic oil reserve is a slow extraction rate as well.
Yes, extraction and distribution. It will take a while, but
To me, the big thing is actually just I think that the EU, the United States, we've been right on our sanctions of Russia, and I think it's very simple. And I realize this is kind of out of the blue. But
better time than any to segue.
Well, I've never seen a country with $630 billion in foreign currency reserves then watch them lose $450 billion in foreign currency reserves because of where they left their foreign currency. So the reason so if you're a nation state, you hold foreign currency reserves to try and stabilize your own national currency.
Right.
Joke's on you if you're Russia because you kept $630 billion, and then you decided to.
So how does that work when you hold foreign currency reserves? Does that basically mean you have other people hold the Russian ruble if you're Russia? Like they're holding the Russian ruble over there, or are you holding
their currency against their
or
bank?
are you holding like the dollar? You know what I mean?
Right. So it all actually depends. So the great thing about foreign currency reserves is that what it boils down to is I sold you $20 worth of wheat and you gave me $20 and I can't spend that $20 back here. So I buy a thing within your country. So like maybe it's that's the local grain or maybe it's insurance. Who knows?
Yes. And then usually, whenever we buy something from Russia, as in we, the US, buy something from Russia always turns it around. And usually they buy some sort of, because we're a service economy, they buy some sort of financial product that we have. Usually, almost always.
Because we're selling it usually cheaper than it's worth.
Yeah.
And so
they spent their dollars in the US, and then all of a sudden the US is like, okay, whatever they bought, whether it's gas, whether it's steel, well, you can't ship it to Russia because we placed a sanction.
Yeah, it's not theirs anymore.
Because okay. So jokes on Russia. That makes sense. Jokes on Russia.
Yeah. No, it's why it's relatively anything now. It's the entire process.
That's pretty bizarre. That sucks for Russia. But does it though?
They pick the fight.
Yeah, it's rough. I feel bad for the citizens of Russia because they're the ones dealing with this hyperinflation. A lot of them want nothing to do with this war, and their assets are being seized, like Jordan Belfort's are.
We got the great question of what do sanctions mean, and we got it from Santieski Bear. Santieski Bear.
Wow.
And so I'll explain it very simply. So it boils down to this, and it's that. Russia had started maintaining and has, after the fact, $630 billion in foreign currency reserves. Now, how do those foreign currency reserves play out? And it's really easy. About $310 billion of that are in securities.
So bonds, stocks.
Mainly stocks.
Really?
Stocks.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be bonds.
We'll talk about the bond. We'll talk about no, it is bonds too, but we'll talk about the bonds
later. Okay.
Later when we get to that category. So half of that money is in securities. Here's the great part about sanctions, and it's very simple. It's that once the sanctions are writ, it's over. It's all done. So 311 billion securities. Those are all frozen. They're blocked. So blocked is a specific term used by central banks, by bankers in general. What it means is the owner cannot sell, manipulate, in any other way, borrow against this product or asset because it is blocked, right? So $311 billion of Russia's $630 billion in foreign currency are in securities.
Yeah.
$152 billion are in
currency deposits.
And currency deposits means essentially deposits in foreign central banks.
Yeah, so I see that most of it is in the ECB, a lot of it is in China, a lot of it is in Japan.
Well, so here's the great part.
Between Europe, China, Japan, it makes up more than 50%.
Absolutely. And the United States as well. And so what that means is all these deposits you have in a foreign central bank, well, you can't collect against it because they're sanctioning you.
You can't use it. You can't collateralize it.
Absolutely not, because
you can't borrow against it.
Exactly, because not only will the private banks not, once they know your account, they'll turn around and they'll be like, hey, can I sell this? And both their seniors in the same bank will tell them, absolutely not. And then if you were to apply and try to actually just do it with ignoring it, the central bank will go, oh yeah, no, we're not crediting that. We're not moving that around.
Right. But what my big question is, okay, so they have $311 billion in securities that they own, and it's not necessarily Russia owns it. It's Russian state banks, which I'm sure the actual nation state of Russia has some sort of skin in the game in those Russian state banks, of course, because it's not like America. But they own all these securities. So how would the people, the issuers of those securities, how would they get them back? Do you know? Or is it just like they can just call them back whenever they want because of the sanctions?
So the great part is, it's kind of like selling anything. Once I've sold it to you, it's on you. I've already got the money. I don't give a I really don't care about what happens after the fact.
Really?
Yeah, no, if I'm selling you a red car and you buy it from me, and then tomorrow it turns out that red cars cause cancer, I don't care. I already sold my red car. Yeah, right. I don't care.
No, but when I'm trying to look at it, what if I bought like a portion of your house, and then all of a sudden I'm getting sanctioned? Like, how would you get that part of your house back? How would you get that part of your house back?
You can't. But also, you don't just get sanctioned. So here's the beautiful thing: is Russia had $630 billion, in total currency deposits. 311 in securities. Those securities, in many cases, are frozen because they are in Europe, the United States, Turkey. Businesses that are more willing to do. Turkey,
Saudi Arabia. Yeah, whatever.
That's how he died.
He's dead.
Did he die? He's dead. But it's one of those things where the party is going to solve itself. It's one of these things where, a nation with $630 billion that has picked a fight is losing the fight, which is the weird part. And then claims, I don't need to borrow money, despite it closes down its
stock market has been closed for like 3 days.
And more than doubles its interest rate from the which is 9.5% to 20%. Which is a nation that is watching the world collapse around it. And it's basically going to be like, oh, did you go to Ukraine and shoot at the neighbor?
And I'll say this, Russia has not been a world player in the global economy. I'm not trying to sound harsh. They haven't been. I mean, to put things in context, their GDP is less than $2 trillion.
Yeah,
right?
and at
so
the rate,
there's like six companies in the U.S. right now with a market cap greater than their GDP.
Worse.
Oh, in the last 5 days, it's gotten a lot worse. I don't even know what it's at now, but like Apple, for instance, is a bigger world economic player than the entire country of Russia. And that's just one American company. Mm-hmm. So they're not a huge economic threat. Yeah. But granted, $311 billion worth of securities, $152 billion in currency deposits, gold, all the gold that they carry, which is about $130 billion. That can cause a squeeze. I mean, I think so. Okay. I mean, $130 billion in gold is no joke. So not to mention the amount of oil and stuff that they still produce every single year. Oh, and then palladium. How do you say that?
Palladium.
Yeah. They produce quite a bit of that, and I think the world is going to want more and more of that. Palladium. Palladium.
Palladium. Yeah.
I'm just, to my defense, English is my second language.
Calm down, Aaron Song.
My last name is Wong, man. So what am I going to do?
It's pronounced wrong.
Wrong.
Sir.
There's an R in there somewhere. But yeah, this is palladium is like platinum, rhodium, iridium. I mean, it's apparently it's super rare.
No, I know.
I think
palladium is quite
one of the big things that it does is that it's a good transfer of fuel cells and solar energy, so that's why people like it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's going to be used a lot more in semiconductors. So I think that's the big thing, right? But it's not like, to me, like the Chinese Taiwan thing. I think that's going to be a much larger concern for the rest of the world because of the semiconductors in Taiwan. I mean, different subject for a different day, but
absolutely.
I haven't seen palladium prices recently, but I can't even imagine how much you're getting squeezed, and I have no idea where else in the world produces palladium aside from Russia, Canada, and I think South Africa.
Russia's also going to fuck with aluminum markets.
Oh yeah, they produce a ton of aluminum too. which is because they have so much land. There's so much land in Russia, and they still
so
want
much
Ukraine.
land and such a low production per square mile. It's horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, think about and it's such a massive country, and they still want Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
Ukraine's a pretty big country too. But
Let's put it this way: Ukraine has 44 million people. Russia has 144, so it's 1 versus 3. And I'll be honest, I'm not entirely unconvinced that Ukraine believes they can make it a 1-to-1 game in the next 10 years.
Ukraine's about the size of Texas.
All right,
but as far as the sanctions go, I mean,
they're all brilliant in my books.
But the only stipulation that I have with these sanctions, and I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer here, because I'm all for all these sanctions. Don't get me wrong.
All right, Debbie, what do you want about?
Okay, so this is what I'm down about. Okay, is Vladimir Putin himself has come out and said, I don't care about the negative economic repercussions that Russia might face with the invasion of Ukraine. Okay. So I understand why we do these sanctions. I understand the reason for these sanctions is to try and convince, and this sounds really bad. This is my preface this once again by saying I'm for these sanctions, but historically, sanctions don't necessarily work, or they take too long to work.
I don't think they're going to take too long to work with Russia on this case.
This one is the most extreme I've ever seen. So, and that I've ever heard of in history books. Because like the big sanction that we talk about historically is like US and Cuba with the trade embargoes.
Well, that's a sanction. At this point, what the US has done is they've locked Russia out of European markets, and then they've started telling them things like, your securities are frozen, you cannot use them. Your foreign currency deposits in foreign central banks will not leave those central banks.
What doesn't matter? Yeah, it's essentially like, hey, you just loaned someone $611 billion. You're not getting that, or not 611.
And then it says, and on top of that, it says, oh, you have $57 billion in private banks.
Oh yeah,
we'll try and sneak it to the central banks. And then the response is, oh, those same central banks that are like, no, you can't do that here.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, think about it like this, right? They have all these foreign currencies. That's 630 billion in total. That's basically like, you lending someone money. Like it's just like a law that you can't get your money back. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah,
it's exactly what it is.
It's about right, except they've got bullets.
Yeah, and then on top of that, so obviously Russia probably owns some of our debt. They probably own a lot of debt from countries around the EU and other countries in Asia, other sovereign countries in Asia. But it seems like everybody's like, all the other countries they're like, well, we're going to get our money back. Like we're just we're just going to get our money back. Or they've bought swaps, which, hopefully, I don't know, whatever.
Well, here's all, for me, all I want to say on the podcast is that out of Russia's $630 billion in foreign currency reserves, $311 billion is in securities. Vast majority of that is now frozen by Western banks. $152 billion in currency deposits in foreign central banks. I'll be honest, those are frozen fucking too.
Yeah, of course.
25% in currency deposits. That's just a number. 14% of that is in China. 13% of that is in yuan denominated deposits. Fine. Okay. So 14% of your reserves are in China. $57 billion in private banks. Well, if those private banks have to do anything with the European Central Bank or any other American Central Bank, they can't give you the money. And $130 billion in gold. Fantastic. So you've got $52 billion in yuan and $130 billion in gold. Knock yourselves out, Russia. How much further do you think you can get?
Right. Yeah, that won't stretch you very far. I mean,
no, it won't. I joked earlier, ruble or rubble. And to be fair, at least ruble holds things up.
When they're working together.
Well, yeah, it's doing better than the ruble. Put that way.
It is. It absolutely is. There's definitely more utility in rubble than ruble.
Yeah. Maybe turn into concrete one day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but the point of sanctions is really just to squeeze an economy to get it to stop doing something or motivate it to do some sort of regime change. I mean, think about what we did with Myanmar last year.
Yeah, sure. So what I'll say with Russia is, Russia has or had $630 billion in foreign currency. And the vast majority of that, obviously they held onto it in order to exchange it into market to prevent other positions. And that being said, is unsuccessful to do so.
Yeah, it's this has been like the worst squeeze because this is the entire world sanctioning you. It's not just like the United States and Cuba or the United States and Myanmar.
A general understanding of the central banks. Yeah,
it's the entire world saying we're not doing business with you until you stop doing this. I mean, but like I said, and I hate to be the devil's advocate, and I'm all for these sanctions.
Go on.
But like I said, it's not. I don't think Putin's going to look at these sanctions and have a change of heart. I'm sorry.
Well, no, of course he's not. He's got enough money. He's going to be fine.
Oh yeah, he's the third wealthiest person in the world. Yeah, he's crazy. Yeah,
these initial financial sanctions, which are locking out the banks, which are locking out everything else. Sberbank's affiliates in Europe, they're facing a bank run. They're going to fail. It's over for some of these guys. And look, the fact that the Russian ruble went from $1 bought 80 rubles to $1 bought 88 rubles to $1 is like 108 rubles.
I think it was dude, before, because when they parked troops in front of Ukraine, it took a tumble, and then
it got worse,
and it's just So I don't know. At one point, it was better than 1 to 88.
But on Friday, when the Moscow exchange closed, it was $1 bought 108 rubles, and now the market's closed in Moscow. They won't exchange currency. They will not open the markets. Everything's gone wrong. Well, it's because the Russian markets are burning down.
But like I said, it's tough because like we mentioned, this Putin guy just doesn't care about the economic repercussions of these sanctions. He's willing to let the economy. You okay?
Yeah, I spilled my beer and then sat in it.
Yeah, don't.
It's a damp.
Yeah, don't do that next time.
No, I know. Fuck me. Sitting in a puddle.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that, dude.
I know, me too.
I thought you said the because I was talking about Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, he's Vladimir awkward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I said this. I tweeted this, so like I said, another shameless plug to our Twitter account. Put is in Putin. So buy puts. I don't know if that logic actually adds up. Not financial advice. I guess what I'll
say is a really quick explanation of why. So here's what sanctions are essentially. You can't do business with someone.
Yeah, you cut off trade. And usually it has to do with, like I said, you're trying to get the leader of a country to stop doing something or to continue to do something or do more of something or I don't know, whatever.
So you can encourage or you can discourage. And so what's going to happen is, to discourage the Russians, the United States has done very simple things. You can't export to Russia a very simple thing. So maybe it was historically it was a microchip that helped to run a tractor. You can't export that now. So there are export limits. So that's a form of sanction.
Yeah.
Something that in order to leave the United States, you have to have a license to take it to a country in question. And when that country in question
gets sanctioned,
pass the test, then suddenly you can't.
You don't have the.
Yeah, you don't have a license. You can't
to do business there.
Important to that question. So then we run to several of the others. Things like, how are the financial sanctions affecting Russia? And it's very simple. The sanctions are reducing the amount of Russian cash money. For lack of better terms, Aaron and I were just talking about how the fact that there was $630 billion in total foreign currency reserves, $311 billion in securities, $152 in deposits, $25 billion in currency deposits, $57 billion in private banks. What happens to those? Well, here's the beautiful thing, and it all comes down to central banking. And I'm sorry I'm late on how I brought in how central banking is really what matters, is that we're all in the United States. And so if Bank of America and Wells Fargo need to make a $35 million transaction between a person who is receiving the money at Bank of America and a person who's sending money from Wells Fargo, well, at the end of the day, Wells Fargo just turns around and calls the Federal Reserve and goes, we need you to transfer a $35 million deposit credit from us to the next bank. Yeah. So any major financial transaction involves a central bank, just how it works.
Well,
and so,
now that makes sense. Even domestically, right?
Absolutely, even domestically. So even Wells Fargo needs to talk to Bank of America. Wells Fargo needs to talk to SunTrust, whoever it is. Yep. They don't call the other bank and go, "Hey, I'm sending you $20 million by wire." They call the Federal Reserve and they go, "Hey, I need you to convert $20 million in an hour."
Well, it's always a product that's being bought too. So it's but it's a product that's being bought disguised as a loan, right? Or vice versa. Did I say that weird? It's a loan disguised as a product being bought. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, it's a loan disguised as a product, unless they just flat out say, "Hey, I own this deposit. I need you to transfer it to a different bank. So transfer this credit to a different bank." Mm-hmm. Having said that, on top of that, Russia has essentially at this point $130 billion worth of gold. They can still try to move. And that's really about it.
But who can buy from Russia? Who's allowed to buy from Russia? Who wants to do business with Russia? Nobody wants to be caught doing business with Russia.
Well, no one, because no bank can. So here's the great part: is that no bank can.
Yeah, but if you're a bank, like the banks that can.
No, you can't. If you're a bank that wants to do business with the United States, you can't also be doing business with Russia right now.
Oh yeah, that's a very powerful part of the sanctions, right? That's why not Russia. That's why China stopped doing business with Russia, which is weird. That's why China stopped doing business with Carrie Lam. So Carrie Lam, the main lady in Hong Kong, she's spent the last few years doing all of her business in pure cash because Hong Kong banks won't touch her because they need to do business with U.S. banks, and U.S. banks have said, nah, she's off limits. Yeah, and that's what's going on with Russia banks and China because they're like on the same team. They're like,
I'm not so sure. I think the Chinese banks might be looking at Russia going, I never liked white people, and this is why.
But I think they looked at each other and they're like, the way you look at Ukraine in 10 years ago, the way you looked at Ukraine and Crimea, like that's kind of the way we look at Taiwan right now. But Taiwan is so.
Well, if I was Taiwan right now, I'd be looking at what Ukraine's doing, and I'd be like, you know what? If I can dig in like that, I can prevent Beijing from coming over.
Right, and I'm telling you, like, I think the entire world would sanction the hell out of China.
Yeah.
Have you
seen what we've done to Russia?
Right, yeah. It's the same as it'd be that, but 10 times worse.
I'll be honest, I'm not entirely convinced the rest of the world likes Ukraine.
No, it was one of those things where, like, when they first invaded Ukraine and then the markets rebounded, remember that crazy thing on Thursday or Friday?
That still doesn't make sense to me.
800 points right at open, and then 900 points, and then all of a sudden, boom, right back up. It's up 1.5%. I'm like, what? So no one cared about Ukraine, obviously. Right?
Well, why? Is what I
understand. I mean, it's a $2 trillion economy, and then Ukraine's even smaller than that. So maybe they're just looking at it from that perspective. I don't know. I don't know why the markets were bounded like that. Not to mention, I was so drunk, and I still knew that. Give me some credit.
No, you nailed it, son.
Thank you. That's all the reassurance I needed. Okay. But back into sanctions. I mean, usually sanctions always start with military stuff. So it's like, okay, arms dealers can't sell guns or sell.
So what's happening with Russia is now it's not even that.
Usually, but I'm saying normally it starts with that. With Russia, it didn't. Russia was like energy.
Well, no, what's really happened is it's something like this. It's that the entirety of Russia's industry and economy has been shut down. Has been targeted and shut off because it's a lot easier to shut down someone and say you can't any of these things. You can't march your kids across a border. All I'm going to say is this, and I'll say this because I am well and truly fashiket. The currency of Russia crashed, and they more than doubled their interest rate.
And they're still crashing.
And it's still crashing. Now, they were going to use the foreign currency reserves to try and stabilize the ruble. They can't do that. No. First off, you've lost 70% of your $630 billion in foreign currency reserves. Fine, sell your gold. Sell your gold for very specific points. No, you can't. It's not going to work in the long run.
Yeah, but you can't. They're going to have such a tough time buying it. And like, what are they going to get for the gold that they sell?
I don't know. Pokemon,
whatever
someone throws
whatever
it
is. All I'm saying, whatever it is that they're receiving for their gold, hopefully it's not the ruble, but odds are it's the ruble. So
yeah. I wouldn't go that far. I would say they're gonna. I think they're actually going to exchange gold for other commodities. It's actually going to be a straight commodity change.
I mean, that's
my
that's a loophole.
My Kalashnikov's out of ammunition, so here's some gold. Give me bullets.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, if anyone gets caught selling a gun to Russia, may God be with you. Like, because that's like the very first thing. Like, sanctions always usually begin with selling guns. You know what I mean? So that was like the U.S. That was like the U.S. Cuba embargo. Right, when that first happened, that was all guns first.
Are actually going to be crippling. I say are actually going to be. No, they are crippling to Russia. They're crippling like crazy. Existentially,
they absolutely are. But the big problem, like I said, is just we have a leader in Russia that says we don't care about the economic impact of this invasion.
Correct.
So
or
these
the
sanctions
impact
are
in life. He's a horrific human being, and I used horrific being loosely.
Yes, and I hate to say this, but not pragmatic at all.
Yeah,
not pragmatic
I know,
at all.
clearly he isn't, and I used to think he was.
2 months ago, you gave him that description.
Hell, 2 weeks ago, I gave him,
which is why we're drinking heavily still.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I mean, but it's man. I feel terrible for Ukraine.
I feel
I feel sorry for the people of Russia that just want nothing to do with this because they're the ones they're economically regressing more than anyone.
Ukraine is going to get hurt by this, but at the end of the day, Ukraine is going to get reimbursed. Europe's going to help Ukraine rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Russia is losing.
Yeah, they're losing.
Manpower. People and Ukrainians are dying as well, but Russia is losing.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, it's not great. But to be fair, I've seen babushkas picking fights with Russian soldiers in Ukrainian villages. And my response to that is kind of, wow, didn't see that happening. This is going to get worse.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing is, these sanctions are all really targeted to squeezing out Russia.
No, they're not even just done that. And I know I've done a piss poor job at this point of explaining exactly how awesome these sanctions are, because they are. These sanctions are amazing. They hit the correct people. They hit the correct places. Let's put it this way. The sanctions as they currently exist prevent the Russian state from being able to, it cannot, let me phrase this, it can issue sovereign debt, i.e. bonds, but
no one can buy them.
No one in the West can buy them. It can...
South Africa can probably buy them. That's it.
No.
Not even South Africa. No, not even them.
No, because South Africa wants to do business with the West.
Of course.
Essentially what it boils down to is if you want to do business with Europe or the United States, you cannot be directly involved with whatever Russia is putting out. Or Belarus.
Yeah.
And here's my thing. Russia versus Ukraine in warfare, for anyone who's paid attention to what warfare is supposed to be, I have read and I have looked, and it is supposed to be the closest thing to a near peer conflict. So not even friends, but equals ever, or at least in my lifetime. And one, they haven't, and two,
yeah, I was gonna say they haven't.
And two, how is Russia? At this point they've had a week, 7 days, and they don't have aerial dominance. They barely have aerial superiority.
No, they're really struggling with Ukraine, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Well, first of all, I didn't think that this fight was going to happen. And second, I thought it'd be over in 3 days. And the fact that we're now at 7, I'm just like, wow, I don't know what message Russia thought it was sending to the rest of the world militarily.
Either way, it's weak.
But I know the United States is now looking at it going, you guys are incompetent and bad at war. I know the Chinese are looking at it and going, Siberia is going to be really easy.
Really?
It's not even a near peer conflict. Russia should have dominated this war within the first 24 hours. And the fact that they haven't, and the fact that the war is still going on 7 days later, I'm just sitting here going definitely there are guys in Beijing going, we could take half of Siberia. Clearly, Russia can't stop us.
Well, yeah, and the crazy thing too is I don't know why China would want to take Siberia, but
natural resources mainly.
Well, obvious. Okay, aside from that, obvious, but and then that's the reason for doing all the stuff that they're doing in in Africa. But have you heard word of Russia capturing a city?
Yes.
Which really?
Yeah, so they took. So what I saw is they took Kherson,
like a major city.
They took Kherson, which is the first city in the Ukraine that they've taken. They have not taken Kiev. They've not taken.
So that's what I'm saying. Like the important cities.
Mariupol. So Kherson is a major rail yard and port on the west side of the Dnieper River, but it's east of Odessa. So it's the first step on the road to Odessa, and
Odessa
Russians,
is one of their main cities.
And Odessa,
I know that much.
Odessa's what they want.
Yeah,
Kherson is based on size is a major city.
So that first city you said, I've never heard of it. To be honest with you, I know Odessa.
Well, so the great thing about Kherson is that the Russians took it the other day, and the Ukrainians took it back with territorial forces. They drove the Russian army out using territorial forces, and
they kind of use it. But that's in World War II, that was the Russian strategy, was the territorial force. That's how they stopped Germany from taking over Russia. Was the territorial forces.
For time.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I think it's pretty funny that Ukraine took that strategy and now they're using that and they took back their own city. I think that's pretty funny.
Well, I think what's wild is that the Russians are attacking some of these cities and the cities are going, nope, we might speak Russian, but we've never killed that many Russians before.
Yeah,
but we're gonna.
I applaud the Ukrainian people for being as resilient as they are.
Absolutely.
And these sanctions, what I hope they do is they squeeze the Russian economy, and it's what I hope they do is they help Putin realize that my economy is doing terrible. Like the Russian economy, and it's been doing terrible. So like I don't think
it is. It's not good.
I don't have very much hope for this happening. But I hope he looks back at his own economy and goes, "Wow, this is terrible. These sanctions suck." I see their list of demands. I will honor those list of demands by withdrawing from Ukraine and honoring the peace agreements and stuff like that, just to make sure that my economy, the people of Russia, stay alive. Because honestly, economically, as bad as I feel for Ukraine, I feel the worst for the citizens of Russia because they're getting hit by this economically more than anybody else that's involved with this.
What I'll say is
aside from the family that gives up everything to go fight. That's those guys.
Yeah, no, and that's a totally different thing.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna have to sign on this and on this and on that, and I'll say is we have some merch. It's pretty awesome.
We do.
We have a
not quite as awesome as the Ukrainian resiliency, but
absolutely
still very awesome.
Yeah, no, ours is pretty sweet looking, but it's not that cool, and that's
definitely not that cool. But it's a tough comparison. It's there's no competition there. So. And to find our merch, just go to drunkenomics.myexpressshop.com. That's where you can find all the cool Drunkenomics hoodies.
And then
from there, we have
a Patreon /Drunkenomics, which is pretty cool. But I'll be honest, I've had too much to drink. I'm gonna try and figure it out. I'm gonna try. If I haven't explained it well enough, I will explain it again.
Yeah, just find us on our LinkedIn.
Find us on
James recover from his hangover. I'm still recovering from my hangover.
It's the not being drunk enough. That's fuck.
Whatever it is. Either way,
that's how he died.
Either way, play chestnut checkers.
Yeah, play chestnut checkers. Don't be Putin.
Fill and kill like James. See what he did? He filled and killed. Look how much fun he's having.
Play chestnut checkers. Don't be Putin. Who didn't?
Don't be Putin.
Who showed up to a chess game with marbles.
Yes, he showed up to play checkers.
Not even, no, he didn't show up to play checkers. He showed up to play.
Yeah, I'm giving him too much credit for
hopscotch.
No strategy whatsoever. So I encourage you to not be like that. Play chess while everybody else is playing checkers. Fill and kill. Don't brag, just say. And most importantly,
stay drunkenomical, guys.
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.